All right, here are the fill in the blank answers. And yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and rip this all in one video here. But here it says humans are both creative and what? Meaning that we can change our environment to make improvements to it. Well, remember we have limited resources, but unlimited wants. Remember, limited resources, but unlimited demand. Unlimited demand. And so humans have to be what we call resourceful to use these limited resources in the best ways possible. So humans are both creative and resourceful. And a lot of times for progress to happen, the other kind of thing that I'll add on to that, just as like a little bit of an extra here, is that humans undergo, or really society, as we advance and innovate, we undergo what's called creative destruction. My example that I like to give here is creative destruction would be something like destroying one industry to make way for something that's even better. So DVDs going away to make way for streaming all over the globe. So DVDs were great for the longest time. I remember in my childhood, DVDs were around, very, very popular, but then that gets destroyed to make way for or to create that new industry. So creative destruction, very powerful in a society. Okay, keeping it moving here, the tendency to see events as more predictable than they really are and becoming convinced that we accurately predicted an event before it occurred is known as, this is hindsight bias. So make sure to review those biases, especially the 4 that we are likely to see on the exam. So just make sure that you do review those. Those are in the packet, those are in your notes. So I'll let you do that and we'll just keep this moving. So blank means that getting the most output from scarce resources. So remember, this is the definition of efficiency or economic efficiency. So efficiency, make sure I spell that right, means getting the most output from resources that are scarce or limited. Okay, scarce is another word for limited. Now, socialism is primarily driven by what type of incentives versus capitalism, which is driven by what type of incentives. So here, socialism primarily driven by negative incentives. So avoiding the government reprimanding you or throwing you in jail. So we want to avoid that, and that's the incentive in a socialist society. Versus capitalism is driven by positive incentives. That's like things that we want, like money or prestige, power, things like that. Okay. Blank describes an individual's subjective values about what is right and what is wrong. That would be morals versus ethics are what describe the principles and applications of what behaviors are correct within a narrow activity area. Now, seeking to benefit yourself, but still respecting others, right? The rights of others is known as blank. Okay, this is going to be self-interest. So different than if we're doing something to try to screw somebody else over, that is conducting unethical behavior that exploits others. That's known as opportunism. Opportunism. Okay. Now, actions taken by the Federal Reserve of the United States to influence interest rates and the supply of money are collectively known as what? Well, Federal Reserve, this is the central bank of the United States, and this is known as monetary policy. The other key term there for types of policies is when the federal government spends money, so like builds roads, for example, or taxes their citizens, that is fiscal policy. Okay, that is fiscal policy. So make sure to review both of those. Now, payments are not required to bring forth a good or service, but rather are an exploitation. Payments that are not required, but rather are an exploitation of a restriction on competition are called, well, this is economic rents. Economic rents. Again, more of a definition thing, but make sure that you review that. Economic rents. And that's just sources of returns that you'd want to make sure that you look at there. Okay, raising investment capital is blank for proprietors and partnerships than it is for corporations. So really the idea here is easier or harder, but so raising capital is harder or more difficult for proprietors and partnerships than it is for corporations. and make sure to review the 4 reasons why. So make sure to review those 4 reasons why. I'll just kind of star that, but definitely something that is fair game. That would be pretty easy to ask a question on. And I know that our application question that dealt with that is rather involved. So there's just like lots of pieces there. So, definitely something that could pop up. Okay. Blank decisions involve determining which productive assets a company should buy. So remember, managers have 3 primary ways that they engage in decision making. And those types of decision making are capital budgeting decisions, capital structure decisions, and working capital decisions. And this one, to decide which productive assets we should buy, we can think about our own lives. So when we create a budget, we are deciding what we are going to spend our money on between rent and food and entertainment. We are deciding what or how we are divvying up our money. Not how we are earning that money, but how we are divvying it up. We are creating that budget. So capital budgeting decisions, very similarly here. So capital budgeting decisions are ones where we are determining what productive assets the company, should buy. Now, capital structure decisions is how are we raising that money between something like debt or equity. Should we issue some bonds? Should we issue shares of stock? That would be capital structure. And then working capital is just making sure that we have, enough cash on hand and making sure that we have, a low amount of obligations in the near term relative to how much cash or current assets we have. Now, the primary goal of a corporation is to maximize shareholder wealth. We want to make sure that we are maximizing that stock price. And then the very last one here, managers and the board of directors have a blank responsibility to act in the best interest of the shareholders. So it's really fiduciary, which is just a legal mandate to act in the economic best interest of the shareholders. So there you go, fiduciary responsibility. All right, if you have any questions about those, make sure that you email me. Just shoot me an email, chris@gpafactory.com. I'd be more than happy to talk through it. But make sure that you're reviewing stuff. Hopefully that was helpful. And we will get into some essay questions in a couple of future videos. So just a little bit longer. So I want to make sure that we are dedicating some time there. So I will see you in those videos.